Hey, the likes are going up, but there's still 33% of you watching these videos that aren't subscribed. Click that button below. Now, I want to see 800 subscribers. Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be talking about some ways to improve exercise execution to get the most out of your workouts. Before diving into any specific techniques or methods of trying to improve exercise execution, we first need to understand that mechanical tension on working muscles is probably the most important factor in trying to drive muscular hypertrophy. Ways of increasing mechanical tension on a muscle would be 1, putting that muscle in an optimal position to do work, and 2, being able to feel that muscle work through its range of motion. Now, how exactly do we do those two things? First, we'll start with putting that muscle in an optimal position to do work. In previous videos and social media posts from us, you've probably seen us say proximal position affects distal function. Now, what exactly does that mean? It means your rib and pelvis positions is going to affect what's going on at your appendages, so your arms and legs. If you're in a better position in your ribs and pelvis, so the stack of ribs over pelvis, you're going to see greater range of motion and joint variability through your arms and your legs, through your shoulders and your hips. Now, by setting up with our ribs stacked over pelvis, even for our accessory work, what that allows us to do is take joints through a greater range of motion. When thinking about hypertrophy and trying to drive mechanical tension to the working muscle, greater range of motion is the key. We want to take the muscle through a full range of motion by taking it to a full stretch, then producing force to create a shortened position of the muscle. Now, setting up in this position, like I said, can affect joint ranges of motion, and what this does is affect your muscle's resting lengths as well. We'll use the example of a one-arm row. If I'm starting in a position where I'm extended through my lumbar spine, what that's doing is having the lat already in a shortened position. When I try to pull the dumbbell up, what I'm doing is taking it from a shortened position to an either further shortened position. What we know about a muscle being concentrically oriented is that it's not able to produce as much force. Now, to counteract that, like I was saying earlier, we want to try and favor a position where our ribs and pelvis are in alignment. Essentially, by being conscious of your starting position, you're able to take muscles through a greater range of motion. Start with your rib and pelvis stacked, especially in your accessory exercises, and that way you're going to target the working muscles a lot better than you would if you were starting in an extended or even a flexed posture. So the second way to put a muscle in a position to do more work is by increasing range of motion through the constraints you use. Now, what do I mean by that? Say if we're doing a split squat, we can raise our front foot to increase range of motion. We can increase range of motion by elevating both feet. We can use something like an anterior load to put ourselves in a good position and make sure that the target muscles are being worked the way we want them to. Now, moving on to being able to feel that muscle working through the exercise. We can introduce tempo as a learning tool. I like tempo because it really makes you conscious of what you're doing throughout the movement. By slowing movements down, you can make sure that you're actually working the target muscles. If you haven't done an exercise before and you're rushing the movement, no doubt there's going to be some extra help coming from other muscles. It's probably going to be a lot harder to maintain that starting position, and then from there, we're going to be doing unnecessary work, driving unnecessary stress, and not getting the desired adaptation that we're looking for. Implementing tempos almost works as like a 2-for-1. If you think about the main drivers of hypertrophy, so if you look at it being mechanical tension, muscle damage, and metabolic stress, by slowing the movements down, we're probably going to apply more tension on the muscle. We're probably going to incur a little bit more muscle damage, especially if we're slowing the eccentric. And 3, by increasing the time under tension, you're probably going to be increasing the amount of metabolic stress. So I would say that's almost a 3-for-1 there. Now, this isn't to say that we should add like a 3 down, 3 pause, 3 up, 3 pause tempo, as this way it's going to be really limiting the amount of load that we can use during our exercise. And load is really important in making sure we're increasing the amount of mechanical tension on the working muscles. Having a little bit of work here that prioritizes metabolic stress is probably going to be okay, but the vast majority of work within our training programs should be a bit heavier. And having excessive tempo is probably not going to allow us to do that. And the final way to feel the muscles working a little bit more when executing exercises is to be conscious of what you're doing. If you're doing a bicep exercise, think about your bicep controlling the movement, the bicep shortening as you bring the dumbbell up towards your shoulder, and then the bicep controlling the movement down on the eccentric or the lowering phase. Being conscious of what you're doing is going to try and drive a bit more of that mind-muscle connection when we're looking for when completing these exercises. To summarize, the two main things we need to make sure we're doing is respecting our setup position, so stacking ribs over pelvis, and making sure we're conscious of what we're doing in our exercise execution so we can really feel the muscle. Both of these two things are really going to make sure that we're driving tension to those working muscles and getting the absolute most of our sessions. If you like the video, please make sure you hit that like button, drop a comment if you've got any thoughts on ways of trying to get more out of your training sessions, and if you haven't subscribed, please do that right now. As always, happy lifting.